So the first thing that we principal evaluation, which is leadership practice or the performance part of evaluation. So here is what that rubric looks like right here. So the rubric in this case is visionary leadership, and I'm going to show you what the separate parts of that rubric look like. So the first thing that we have is up here at the top, where that circle is. What we have there is the strand name and description. So that's what we're measuring. So if we're looking at that strand name, which is the strand one is visionary leadership, the expectation is that effective educational leaders facilitate the development, articulation, implementation, and stewardship of a shared vision that promotes each student's academic success and well-being. That's what we're looking for. So how do we get there? How do we determine whether a principal is actually meeting that expectation of visionary leadership? Well, we have a set of performance expectations in the form of 3 sets of rubrics. So the first line is one performance expectation, which has to do with has to do with the development of the school mission, of collaborating with faculty and staff and sharing responsibility. The second one has to do with using data in order to do that and different levels of looking at that. And then the last one has to do with the actions that a principal takes in order to ensure that stakeholders are fully engaged in the process and are fully engaged in in making the vision happen in the school. All right. So that's the next part, is those performance expectations. Next, we have across the top, we have the performance levels. Now you'll notice that on this rubric, on the performance levels, we only have 3 of the 4. We have minimally effective, we have effective, and we have highly effective. What we have chosen to say is that if a principal doesn't reach the expectations for minimally effective, then they are not effective. So therefore, we don't have any descriptors for not effective. We may find out sometime down the road that we need it, and we know that they're performing for minimally effective, but we were copying what we've done in the Utah Teaching Observation Tool, where there is not a column for not effective, and it seems to have worked fairly well. So we'll just have to see. This is a dynamic document. We're going to be making changes as time goes on. So if that's something we find out we need, then we will certainly put that in. So we've got the strand name, we've got the performance expectations, we've got the performance levels. The next thing that we have is possible evidence. So these are evidences that could be used by an administrator, by an evaluator, as a way of determining what level of performance this principal is reaching on this particular strand, on these particular performance expectations, excuse me. So those are some things that they might be able to use. They also might be able to do some direct observation. They may be able to be in the meetings when the vision of the school is being developed. They might be able to attend school community councils when they're getting information from them or presenting data. So there might be some direct observation that can be done there, but also there are other ways of doing that. Then the last thing we have is, possible sources of evidence over there. Then the last thing we have is the standard correlation. So what this is showing us is that the performance expectation that is on the first line correlates to standards 1.1 and 1.4. The next one down correlates to standards 1.2 and 1.3. And the next one down correlates to standards 1.4 and 1.5. Now, the way we would use those is this. If someone is just that McKill had, we believe that we need to put them on a plan, an assistance plan, or if someone is not even reaching minimally effective, and we know that their performance absolutely has to change, or we may have to dismiss them. Um, that tells us where we should go in order to help this principal. So we would look at standards 1.1 and 1.4, and I'm going to show you some places where you can pick up some helps for that. In fact, I'm going to do that right now. So these are standards correlations. So I'm just going to leave the PowerPoint here for just a second, and I'm going to go back to the website, and these are the standards. So those are the standards that we were looking at. So if we were looking at you interpret the data, the first line, performance expectation 1, that has to do with collaborating with faculty, staff, parents, and the school community to develop a shared mission. If we were looking at the second one, that has to do with standards 1.2 and 1.3, which is collecting, analyzing, and using data. Well, where can we find some information about how we can give professional development or professional learning to that principal? Well, there are a couple of ways to do that. Let me show you what a couple of those ways are. So first of all, we're in the process of developing a school leadership web page on the USOE website, in the USBE website. So if I go to schools.utah.gov and I do / and then I do school leadership, we have oh, wait a minute. I did it wrong. What did I do wrong? Oh, I didn't do schools. There we go. Real-time mistakes using a growth mindset here. So we have a school leadership website, web page. So right now it's just kind of bare bones, but as this grows, we will have a section for teacher leaders. We'll have a section for principals. We'll have a second section for district leaders, and we'll have a way to get in contact with the people who are in charge of leadership in the State Board of Education. Um, so that will be one place to go. Now, when this is up and going, it will have links to the standards, to the evaluation system. It'll also have links to professional learning, ways of doing that, to some modules that can help a principal, to some other things. But one thing that already exists that we're feeling really good about is that McKill Withers, who used to be the superintendent of Salt Lake City School District, was hired not too long ago to be in charge of ULead. Now, ULead is something that you can find on our main page, and it's right here. It's one of those buttons. And if you click on that button, ULead stands for Utah Leading Through Effective, Actionable, and Dynamic Education. So one of the charges that McKill had was to collect resources that could be used for professional learning, for understanding more about particular things. So he's already started working on some of those. We have a contract with Hanover Research, and they do a lot of research for us, and then they create reports. So in this clearinghouse and resources part, right now we have, let's see, oh yeah, here we have it. Right now, we have some innovative and effective practice reports. Those are basically the only things that are there so far. And in those practice reports, there are these leadership toolkits that are about all 7 of our Utah effective principal standards. And if we were looking for some helps for visionary leadership, we might click um, on this link, which would take us to this toolkit that talks about practicing visionary leadership. And as we scroll down, we can see that in the table of contents, there's an area that talks about leveraging available data to make decisions. So we click on that, and that would take us to this area that talks about what kinds of data are available, how can you get at that data, how can you interpret the data, how can you use the data to make decisions, and so on and so forth. So those things are going to be helpful in helping principals to get some professional learning. There'll also be some links to some books and to some courses, some online courses, to some websites. We're going to be curating all of that on that educational leadership website.